Greetings, friends and guests of the channel. Benjamin Fulford latest news. Now, with a big leap forward, we can end the psychopaths forever. The ruling class of the Khazar group in the West is more vulnerable than at any time in its history. This is because a critical mass of people have realized the fact that our governments are our enemies. Thanks to the powerful pressure from the white military, together with farmers, truckers, and ordinary citizens, we will be able to remove them from power and bring them to justice. The Khazar group, for its part, is still desperately trying to poison us and otherwise eliminate us or force us to submit, like Romanian dictator Nicolae Ceausescu, who dramatically increased repression before he was overthrown and executed. This attempt will fail. However, we need to take immediate action, because the ruling class of the Khazars is literally now trying to wipe us off the face of the earth. Look at the situation with Ukrainian grain. Khazar lunatics are trying to bankrupt European farmers by flooding Europe with undervalued Ukrainian grain, which was deliberately poisoned. According to Polish intelligence, food from Ukraine is poisoned with nanoparticles that cause addiction and confusion. To force us to eat their toxic food, the World Forum proposed a complete ban on the production of our own food, citing its favorite excuse: climate change. Meanwhile, giant agribusiness corporations such as Cargill, DuPont, and Monsanto, owned by BlackRock, Vanguard, State Street, and Danking, are smuggling mislabeled grain into Europe. European farmers in at least 14 countries are fighting not to go bankrupt because of this grain. According to Polish intelligence, farmers are blocking roads to stop imports, while government officials are trying to circumvent the blockade by delivering grain by ship. French farmers now not only slow down foreign food vans, but also distribute food for free to everyone. Europeans are lucky that their farmers are still fighting to protect their food supplies. A new study shows that 4 out of 5 Americans have been poisoned with a plant growth chemical that reduces fertility and harms the developing fetus. This is intentional. Remember, the owners of megacorporations intentionally do this to us. They claim that they plan to make 90% of humanity healthy. Who are these people? It turns out that the largest shareholders of 88% of the companies in the S&P 500 index are BlackRock, Vanguard, and State Street. These same foundations also own pharmaceutical companies that have just taken care of the health of tens of millions of people with cocktails. Make no mistake, recent government data from England shows that since the attack began in 2020, 1 million people who drank a cocktail have passed away, compared with 61,000 people who did not have the procedure. This happened against the background of the fact that we received new testimony from the father of Fani Willis, the district attorney attacking the commander-in-chief of the United States, Donald Trump, that he knew about the plans for the fight in 2019. These psychos are also developing plant-based cocktails that will be easily integrated into the food supply system, all without the knowledge of the public. This means that the development companies are legitimate military targets. If you serve in the army or the police, insist on detaining and searching these persons. This is a matter of life for you and your family. Of course, we know who many of the owners are. Tedros, Hillary, and other leaders of the group gather at the Khazar headquarters in Geneva to try to impose their agreement on the global crisis on the countries of the world. This would allow them to seize full totalitarian world power in the event of an emergency that they themselves would create. There will be another problem X, or Y, or Z, and under the current circumstances, the world remains unprepared for the next X and the next. We also saw Klaus Schwab Rothschild at the World Government Summit in Dubai, UAE, last week, who called for the fusion of our physical, biological, and digital identities. Also, being honest, he said, we need an ethical framework to ensure that we keep the ghost of I in a bottle, and we are not creating a utopian future. Of course, the white hats are in business. A senior representative of the Space Forces contacted us after a long conversation with Russian President Vladimir Putin and said that Donald Trump was in Moscow when Tucker Carlson interviewed Putin earlier this month. Important documents were delivered to Trump personally, and as a result, we have a very interesting few weeks ahead of us. The source also said that US officials will soon have a big surprise regarding Iran. Apparently, this is due to Iran's official statement that Antarctica is its property. There is active activity at the North Pole, as well as in Greenland at the Thule base, now called the Patuxent Space Base. Russia is very active at the North Pole, It's as important as Antarctica right now. The Russians already have a large underground base there. This is in conjunction with the WH alliance. No wonder the MSM News doesn't say anything about it. What may be related to this? A video has appeared showing a space weapon starting a fire in Chile, just as it recently happened on Maui and in Mexico. Immediately after that, the chairman of the Intelligence Committee of the U.S. House of Representatives said that there is a serious threat to national security, which is somehow related to space. All I can say is that we keep hoping that the space cowboys will arrive soon to shoot down the satellites and catch the bad guys before they start their fake alien invasion. Meanwhile, back on the surface of the planet, it seems that the secret societies of Asia have taken a big step after the sudden death of Angela Chao. Chao was a Chinese shipping oligarch, a member of the Harvard CFR Council on Foreign Affairs, a member of the Board of Governors of the Bank of China, and the daughter-in-law of Senator Mitch McConnell. Recently, a large amount of banned substances was found on one of her ships as a result of an incident that was hushed up. In addition, she married a billionaire who died a few months after their wedding. Since she was a CFR member, this means that she was Rockefeller's main agent in China. Her sister Elaine has held senior positions in the U.S. government under every president since Ronald Reagan. Angela Chao's death will obviously have huge consequences. Asian secret societies say that as soon as everyone returns from the Lunar New Year holidays, which begin at the end of this week and early next week, big events will take place in China with the beginning of the Year of the Dragon. They promise peaceful reunification of Taiwan and China. Reunification of North and South Korea and regime change in Japan are also possible. We can't talk about much, but we can say that the new Japanese emperor visited Korea and Taiwan as part of these preparations, which is probably what all this has to do with. Vice Admiral Fred W. Kacker replaced Vice Admiral Carlo Thomas as the 54th commander of the U.S. 7th Fleet. It is the world's largest forward-based naval force. The traitors to the rules-based world order in the Navy, who organized the January 1 earthquake in Japan, have been eliminated. Speaking of deposed traitors, the so-called Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin is definitely gone. Russian Security Council spokesman Mikhail Popov noted that when Lloyd Austin was in the hospital, Deputy Secretary of Defense Kathleen Hicks was on vacation in Puerto Rico, and U.S. President Joe Biden and his National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan learned about the situation a few days later. We are not talking about a banana republic, but about a nuclear country that constantly claims to be a global hegemon, Popov stressed. Now we have a headline. Secretary of Defense Austin transferred to intensive care unit, doctors say. The puppeteers took this story as far as they could. Now we are waiting for the official announcement of his death due to unforeseen complications. A Pentagon source comments, hinting at a new military alliance between Russia and the United States. Donald Trump said he would encourage Russia to do whatever it wants with NATO members who do not meet their fair share of defense spending of 2% of the total budget. GDP. Immediately after that, the head of the main operational directorate of the Russian General Staff, Colonel General Sergei Rudsko, said that military personnel from NATO countries, under the guise of mercenaries, serve air defense systems, multiple rocket launchers and tactical missile systems in Ukraine. This means that Russia has an official reason to declare war. Just as Trump says he will not defend NATO, average Europeans would welcome Russian intervention at this point. As Putin notes, for example, German Foreign Minister Annalena Baerbock is hostile not only towards Russia, but also towards her country. It is difficult to imagine that a government official of this level would neglect the economic interests of his country and his people to such an extent. The revolt of farmers in Europe shows the true feelings of Europeans towards their governments. Unsurprisingly, Klaus Schwab Rothschild, Ursula von der Leyen of the UN CEO, Albert Bourla met last week in Davos for more than 3 hours behind closed doors in an emergency meeting. They know they're doomed. A visible sign of this was that French prosecutors recommended the cement manufacturer Lafarge to stand trial on charges of financing terrorism in connection with his past activities in Syria. This is important because we are talking about the criminal prosecution of the Rothschild Company for supporting ISIS. This opens the way for the arrest of real members of the Rothschild clan. It is also obvious that the Rothschild operation to launder Ukrainian money has been terminated. Their puppets in the so-called US government say, "Is there a war in the Middle East? Let's pack the financing for Ukraine." A border crisis. Ukraine is more important. Russian space nuclear weapons. The solution is to finance Ukraine. The money is not coming. Look at how Marjorie Taylor Greene says that British Foreign Secretary David Cameron, demanding that the United States provide more aid to Ukraine, can kiss my ass. Also a puppet of Khazar Zelensky. Is he going to run or ruin his pants? This is a sign of the pure desperation of the deep state. They know that the game is over. A Pentagon source comments. We also saw how Robert Kennedy Jr. dropped truth bombs on NATO expansion, the military-industrial complex, and the real reason for the operation in Ukraine. It's a great expose of who's behind the scenes. In response, the US administration provided Nikki Haley with Secret Service protection, while continuing to deny RFK Jr. the same protection, despite numerous confirmed threats to his life and repeated requests. Of course, Biden won't be able to protect anyone soon because he's being thrown under a bus. Here is another headline from a publication owned by the U.S. government. The threats made in 2021 by Biden are now being used to warn Russia of the devastating consequences if jailed opposition leader Alexei Navalny dies in prison, which has just happened. Alexei Navalny was a terrorist. He was caught planning a color revolution in order to take over Russia with the help of British MI6. He was not a political opposition. He was a foreign intelligence agent, a spy. Navalny was a puppet leader of the West who took control of Russia from within. This is the same strategy that the deep state used to take over Ukraine, a CIA source confirms. We asked British intelligence about his death and received the following response. In fact, he was executed, killed by MI6 officers because he was in high treason against Russia. They also say that he was a double agent of the German DVD. While we're on the topic of treason, it turns out that the U.S. government is financing its own invasion of illegal aliens crossing the southern border by handing them hundreds of millions of dollars in cash and aid through the United Nations. So, the people who forced you to undergo the procedure to keep your job paid money to let in 17 million non-drinkers and the unemployed, as a sign that the situation is getting out of control. Louisiana Governor Jeff Landry became the latest local government official to declare a state of emergency. The situation in an already troubled New York City could get much worse. Truckers are planning to abandon cargo delivery in New York starting Monday, in solidarity with former President Donald Trump after ruling against him in a $350 million fraud case. New York, of course, is one of the hotbeds of conspirators, and the rest of the country is tired of their crimes. Meanwhile, the whole planet is rebelling against the madness taking place in the Gaza Strip. Thank you friends for watching. Like and repost so you help promote the video.